The country has enough supply of rice, at least for now.
Maganda naman ang sitwasyon natin, hindi tayo magkukulang sa bigas at tinitignan natin lahat ng paraan upang ang presyo ay makontrol natin at hindi naman masyadong tataas.
The National Food Authority looks to increase its buffer stock with imported rice, but one agri-group is opposing this, saying that importing rice will just be more costly.
Mababa ang buffer stock ng NFA, kailangan bumili yung NFA para umabot siya ng at least 9 days na buffer stock. So yun ang pinaplano natin ngayon kung paano nila gagawin. Dahil ang NFA, kailangan ibibilhin nila yung kanilang buffer stock, bibili nila sa local producer.
From the standpoint of having more stable rice prices at saka giving government enough capability to address relief requirements during calamities, it will encourage speculation on the prices of rice. Ang worry ko po ngayon, baka po mas abrupt at mas mataas po magiging increase sa presyo ng bigas.
The country has enough supply of rice. That's according to President Bongbong Marcos, who's also the Agriculture Secretary. Still, President Marcos believes there is a need to import rice to increase the buffer stock of the National Food Authority. After all, there is El Nino coming, and a long dry spell could affect the harvest of local farmers. Now, is importation the answer? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao. Of course, with me in the studio, Ana Marie Pamintuan, the Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star. Ami, magandang gabi.
Good evening, Ed.
Okay, good evening to you too. Okay, well, very, very basic issue for everybody tonight. Bigas, kanin.
Oo nga daw baka raw magkaroon ng crisis.
By the second half.
Dumaan ako ng Holy Week. I went to Tarlac. I went to Pangasinan.
Okay.
Dumaan ako.
Rice bowl.
Wow, ganda ng rice fields, ha. Mukhang ang taba-taba naman ng mga harvest na nakita ko. Although, siyempre, nagwa-warning sila magkakaroon doon ng El Nino.
Yeah, but it's only the second quarter eh. Baka by the second half, baka ibang usapan na yan.
Hindi pa naman sigurado nga. Yun na nga lang. But in the meantime, mag-i-import tayo 330,000 metric tons. And sabi nila, government to government, pwede ba yun under the National Tarification Act?
That's what we have to find out eh.
Di ba?
Yeah. Also, whether or not the NFA can be doing that for the benefit of
G2G.
Buffer stocks.
Yun na nga.
Kasi that's imported versus locally sourced na bigas.
But in the meantime, ikaw ba namimili ng bigas sa inyo? Stable naman yung presyo. Well, sa amin. Hindi, medyo tumaas daw ng mga 5 pesos.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the numbers eh. Tumataas nga eh. Parang ang locally, if I saw it right, ang locally priced na regular meal was around 40, tapos yung imported was 44 or 45.
Pero yung iba kasing picture, nakikita ko siguro doon sa medyo malalaki mga wet markets to, no? Meron pa rin 38. Pero yung usual na kinuha ko, yung kinukuha ko by the kaban-kaban yun eh, yung by the sack, mga 2 to 3, 4 lang naman ang tinaas per kilo, ha?
Tumaas pa rin?
Tumaas pa rin siya. Tumaas.
Lumalayo sa 20?
In the past, yeah. Malayo. Kadiwa yun.
The new benchmark, of course, is 20. Well, it's the old benchmark already.
Kadiwa is 25. 25 ang kadiwa.
Yeah, that's true. Well, okay, let's talk about the 20 as a target, the aspirational objective. Anyway, so we will go into a quick break. When we come back, we will be talking, of course, about rice. So please do stay with us. Let's just be right back. And And welcome back to the Chiefs. Joining us now in the studio, Mr. Raul Montemayor, the National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers Cooperatives, and via Zoom, former Agriculture Undersecretary Fermin Adriano. Sir, gentlemen, magandang gabi. And
Magandang gabi
welcome
din.
back to the
Good evening
Chiefs.
Good evening, Ma'am Ami, Sir Ed.
Sir Adriano, Dr. Adriano, can you hear us?
Good evening. Yeah. Loud and clear.
Yes, sir.
Magandang gabi sa inyong dalawa.
Thank you, sir, and welcome back. Sir, let me start off, very, very basic question. Kasi Malacanang government, everybody talks about we will have enough supply of rice and all that. Right? But let me reframe the question. Kasi mukhang di naman problema yung supply talaga per se. Because there's always rice that we can import. Do we have enough supply of rice at the right price?
Yes.
Whether or not bumagsak yung production sa local o tumaas yung presyo sa imported, do we have enough rice supply at the right price for consumers?
And maybe you should add at the right time.
At the right time.
Yes. Okay, so our supply comes from what they call the carryover stocks, yung natira from the previous year, and then what is locally produced during the year, plus imports. No, for the past, actually for many years, our carryover stock plus our local production is not enough for our local consumption. So we really need to import about 10 to 15% of our annual requirement. We have to import. We have no choice. No? But during harvest time, we have ample supply because the stocks are coming in and we have imports. But during this, what they call the lean months from July, August, September, where we have very little production, yun po yung critical period na pinaghahandaan parati. Because if we do not have enough stocks by July 1, the next harvest will occur in late September and October. Paano kung maubusan tayo during that 3-month period at magkaroon ng calamity? Yun ang dapat paghandaan natin. And when we talk about ample supply, yes, we have ample supply until June. But by the end of June, our projection is we will have only about 1 month supply left if the imports do not come in. And we have 3 months to cover. So that will be a problem that we have to address.
Yung ample supply po ninyo, does it factor in the buffer stock?
Actually, you should not include the buffer stock in the supply that is sold daily.
Because it's supposed to be emergency.
It's a reserve stock. Hindi mo yun ibibenta openly sa market. You reserve that for instances where there's a calamity and you need to provide rice assistance to calamity victims. So, pwede mo rin isama siya, but in the normal course of trade of rice, you set that aside. That is not part of regular supply. No?
Kasi tinanong ko po yung buffer stock because that's being used now as the reason, binabalak daw ng National Food Authority na mag-import G2G, government to government, dahil kalahati na lang daw in the coming weeks, magiging kalahati na lang yung buffer stock requirements natin. Is that an accurate assessment? Yun na muna. Is it accurate?
Actually, they will run out of buffer stocks by June 30.
Oh.
And the reason is they have been disposing of the stocks for kadiwa, for rice allowances, etc. Whereas the rice tarification law mandated that those buffer stocks can only be released for calamities. No?
So should we be releasing it for kadiwa to begin with? Dapat ba kinakadiwa natin yan?
Good intention, but if you read the law, it's not allowed unless there is a calamity. No? So, and when they say they want to replenish that for calamities, hopefully they will keep it in reserve for calamities, not use it to sell to the general public. No? It's one of the infirmities of the rice tarification law, we think, no? That it has tied the hands of government in responding to crisis periods like this one.
Sir, let's bring in Dr. Adriano. Sir, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
In
Go ahead, sir.
general, I agree with the analysis of Raul. No? Talagang tama yung sinasabi niya na yung buffers na lumiliit talaga pag third quarter. But based dun sa data, assuming that, kasi yung SPS, may nag-a-apply dyan, assuming that 50% of it comes in, yung ginamit ng SPS, by yung pinaka-critical yung quarter 3, ito sa datos na nakikita namin, 20 days lang yung buffer stock natin. 20 days lang yung yung supply natin, not buffer. Yung supply natin 20 days. And we have to have healthy about 60 days or 30 to 60 days yung inaano natin, tinitingnan natin. So talagang manipis nung third quarter kasi nga yun yung magsisimula pa lang dyan yung harvest. Tama yung sinasabi niya, yung hindi talaga pwede dapat sa batas, sa RTL, na ipagbili yung sa NFA kasi it is really meant for buffer stock. Ngayon, hindi din pwede ang NMA sa batas na mag-import directly for that purpose because nakalaan doon sa batas, stipulated in the law, that the buffer stock will have to be built from the purchase of
Yes, sir.
locally produced palay
Yes, sir.
or rice. And the reason for that is because of the fact that we want to use government funds to benefit our farmers rather than benefiting foreign producers of rice. Yung po yung dahil yung objective nung buffer stock na yung bibili ka sa lokal na mga magsasaka. Hindi ka pwedeng bumili o import. So medyo taliwas yun sa batas kung mag-i-import yung NFA. Otherwise, they have to change the law. Yun lang po aking masasabi.
Sir, pero often nga, at least as far as what you both have said, may dalawang sabit eh. One is the use of the buffer stocks for example, the Kadiwa stores. And the other one, NFA importing instead of buying from locally produced local farmers to beef up the buffer stock. So mukhang may dalawang sabi doon. Pero as far as intentions are concerned, would the intentions justify itong dalawang problemang ito or hindi rin?
Hindi, sa tingin ko kasi ang intention talaga ng batas ng RTL maganda na bumili ka sa magsasaka natin. Ngayon, kung sinasabi nila na mas mataas ngayon yung presyo sa support price na binibigay ng NFA na 19, ang average price nga pala 20.44 ngayon. Prevailing average price 20.44. Ang gawin mo, taasan mo yung budget ng NFA para makabili yung NFA sa ating mga magsasaka. Kaysa gamitin mo yung pera na naman ng gobyerno para mag-import ng rice sa Vietnam na makikinabang lang yung mga Vietnamese, hindi yung magsasaka natin. Di ba?
Yeah, para makatulong.
Mr. Adriano, halimbawang government to government yung procurement ng NFA. Pwede ba yan? Can it go around the law on rice tarification?
Hindi po.
Yan ang balak nila.
Hindi po. Hindi po sa
kahit
tingin ko.
G2G,
Hindi ako
hindi
abogado,
pwede.
pero klaro yung tama yung sinasabi ni Leoning yung Mayor na bawal talaga po yun. Hindi po pwede talaga yung klaro-klaro sa batas yun, stipulated po yan. Kaya nga noon nag-iisip sila gagamitin na instrumento yung PITC na mag-import. Yun po yun. At yung 9 days na sinasabi nila, actually, kasi 37,300 ang consumption metric tons. Ang consumption natin ng bigas araw-araw. So, yung 9 days na yun, by basically 330,000 metric tons. Yun ang iniisip nila. Pero hindi pwede ang NFA. Sa aking interpretasyon, sa tingin ko doon sa batas, ay mag-import. Hindi pwede yung G2G. Kasi yun ang espiritu ng RTL na tanggalin ang gobyerno sa rice trading.
So, Mr. Montemayor, kung hindi pwede yung G2G, anong pwedeng alternative ng government if they're saying they need 330,000 metric tons?
Well, they can buy locally by raising their buying price. Kaya naman yon. Or they conduct an auction so that farmers can sell to the agency at the price that wins during the auction. No? But it doesn't solve the problem of the kakulangan sa buong supply. Because we're talking only the buffer stock. Pero kung ang problema natin ngayon, bawal mag-import ang gobyerno, baka hindi rin mag-import masyado ang private sector dahil tumataas ang presyo sa international. No? And without those imports, we will have a very tight situation. No?
Yun na nga sana itatanong ko, hindi ba pwedeng i-encourage ng gobyerno yung private sector under the Tarification Act? Pwede ba dagdagan niya yung import niya kasi medyo baka kulangin tayo?
Well, how do you encourage? Because these are profit-seeking people. No? They will buy, they will bring in imports on the hope that they will sell at a profit. No? Now, if they think that the import price is too high, and when it comes in, the government will start imposing price controls, no? Or even compete with them in the market, baka maniguro sila, dahan-dahan tayo, baka malugi tayo. No? So I think they have to talk to the importers and provide some assurances. Because right now, realistically, the dry season production is already being harvested. We cannot do anything about that anymore. The carryover stock from last year, it's already there. No? The only thing we can control now are the imports. No? Will they come in on time and enough quantities? No?
But is there any mechanism, Dr. Adriana, I'll also bring you into this. Is there any mechanism in the rice tariffication law or any other regulation for that matter, which would allow, for example, encouraging importers to continue importing kung tayo nahihirapan doon sa sa pricing?
Tama si Raul kasi profit maximizer yung mga traders na yan. So pag talagang bumaba yung presyo nila dito, talagang, siyempre, hindi ikaw, lugi ka, ikaw isa sa trader. Ang ginagawa ng Department of Agriculture, actually, ang nangyayari, napakalaming SPS or Sanitary and Phytosanitary Clearance ang ini-issue niya. Pero yung ginagamit ng mga traders, between 35 to 50% lang. Yun po, na walang penalty. Nung pa pinag-iisipan niya, dapat i-penalize na nag-apply ka ng SPS at hindi mo ginamit, may penalty ka, parang katulad sa onion. Pero dito sa bigas, wala So, ang kailangan po talaga, siguro yun, paghigpitan natin yung SPS na pag nag-apply sila at in-approve ng papamalaan, dapat gamitin nila. Kung hindi, hindi na sila pwedeng bigyan ng permiso ulit. Yun ang unang kalawa. Ikalawa, sa tingin ko talagang, although sa internationally, makikita mo itong March, bumaba ng presyo nung rice price, particular sa Vietnam, naging 455 or something, bumaba. But I hope it will be maintained, but I'm not too hopeful kasi nga because of the continuing crisis in Europe, at petrol prices, etc., fertilizer prices. So talagang ang secular trend talaga niyan, talagang tataas yung presyo. Ngayon, tama nga sinabi na Raul, pag nag-price nag-regulation tayo, wala talagang mag-i-import kasi sasabihin nila malulugi sila. So yun ang problema natin. Unless ang gobyerno ay willing to spend so much money na mabangkarote siya, na magbumili siya tapos malugi. Yun lang nakikitang paraan.
How much would that cost, sir? How much would that cost if government does take that option?
Sa tingin, itong taon na to, based dun sa datos, ang sabi ko nga, titingnan ko lang ulit, ang sinasabi ko, dito sa taong to, assuming na ang projection ng Department of Agriculture, by quarter 3, lean talaga yung mga months na yan, 20 days lang yung ating supply outlook. Tapos by quarter 4, tataas siya ng 45. So normally may 45 days tayo. Tama si Presidente din, based on the data ng Department of Agriculture, na may supply tayo na 45 days is mga around 1.8 million metric tons yan. So meron tayo pang mga supply during that time. Assuming, again, sabi na nga niya, mabibigyan natin ng tamang ayuda yung mga magsasaka. Itong incoming planting season, itong May, June, July, Kasi kung hindi natin mabibigyan ng ayuda, halimbawa ng abono or other seeds or something like that, medyo bababa talaga yung production natin, productivity. Kaya dapat bantayan din ng departamente yung productivity natin ko sa pagbibigay ng tamang ayuda. Ita-timing nila yung ayuda talaga. Talagang dapat magtrabaho talaga sila.
Mr. Montemayor, nabanggit na niya na medyo stable naman yung state ng rice supply overseas. Pero there are recent reports also na yung ibang bansa like India are holding on na, starting to hold on to their stocks dahil nga nagkakaproblema pa rin, fertilizer, marami mga kung ano-anong mga problema, So what's really the status outside? Kasi we're so dependent on imports,
There's a lot of speculation in the international market. Recently nga, nag-announce ang Indonesia. Normally, Indonesia does not import rice. They are self-sufficient. They already announced that they will import 2 million tons this year.
Wow.
Because of the projected effects of El Nino. And then you have the situation of importing countries who are also affected by fertilizer prices and climate change. They will now have to import more. So, kumbaga, nag-aagawan sa international market ngayon. And then, countries like Vietnam, Thailand, at some point, maghihigpit yan sa exports kasi baka silang maubusan. Kung masyadong mataas ang presyo sa international, there will be a massive outflow of stocks. Baka sila ngayon ang magkakaroon ng rice crisis. So, it's a very dynamic market, very thin market actually. And when the Philippines enters that market, it could create a lot of ripples. So, this announcement of importing 300,000 tons, dapat quiet lang tayo dyan kasi it will affect international prices.
So dapat natin nag-usapan.
Oo, Mr. Adriano, I remember yung crisis nung nakaraan Di ba may mga nagsasabi yung tayo daw, we were driving up the prices of international prices of rice. Dahil bili daw tayo ng bili ng bili. Ano bang situation in your assessment, yung situation ng rice supply outside the Philippines?
Medyo stable siya kasi. Ang pinakamatindi kasi diyan, tatlong bansa napakalaki nung pina-export. Ang pinakamalaki half of the exports actually is coming from India, and then tapos Vietnam and Thailand. Yung Indonesia also, imports about 5 to 10% of their rice requirement. Ang pinaka-critical tanga nga dito sa atin nga, kaya nga sinasabi namin noon pa, na i-diversify natin yung ating sources of imports. And that's the reason why we wanted to extend the lower tariff to India during that time. Kasi sa India, 50% ang taripa natin. Samantalang sa Vietnam, 35%.
Oh,
Ang sinasabi namin, i-parity natin sa India para maka-access tayo sa Indian rice. Kasi yun yung pinakamalaki. Sila yung pinakamalaking surplus sa buong daigdig. And from the strategic perspective, we need to maintain good relationship with India kasi malaki talaga yung production nila. Not only sa rice, but other commodities at malaki yung market nila kasi alam naman natin yung nangyayari sa China na nagkakaipitan tayo dyan. So yung market access natin, I think will be constricted. So from the perspective, ito yung foreign policy now, kailangan talaga ilakasan natin yung relationship with India because that is one of the emerging economic superpower and one of the major sources. About, I said, 50% ng rice exports is coming from India at ang pinakamababa pong presyo sa pagdaigdigang merkado ay po sa India kasi meron silang sources na nakuha nila sa Russia, yung fertilizer, petroleum, kasi hindi sila sumama doon sa Western ban against Russia.
Let me comment on that now because we oppose that move of the government to lower the tariffs on non-ASEAN imports. When they lowered the tariffs on non-ASEAN imports, our imports from India actually went down. No? Ang medyo lumaki yung Pakistan. No? It hasn't worked. And in the process, we lost about ₱500 million in tariff revenues. 85% of our supply comes from Vietnam. And I think the importers here would rather deal with ASEAN suppliers than India and Pakistan because we are not the traditional markets for the rice.
Pero bakit siya bumaba kung ganung binabaan yung
Yun ang
tariff?
pagtaka. But there was a time when India actually restricted its exports of rice because they were having problems with their supply due to climate disturbances. No? And again, we are not the traditional market. They supply to Middle East, they supply to Africa. At saka yung klase ng India rice, medyo iba sa panlasa natin. No?
Ito yung basmati.
Not basmati, that's a very expensive variety.
Yes,
But their long grain is not the same as Vietnam rice. No? So it's not just a matter of lowering the tariff, but preferences of importers and consumers. No? So I think that strategy of trying to diversify sources hasn't worked. The data is very clear. No? We still are heavily reliant on ASEAN suppliers for our rice. No?
Pero sir, gentlemen, if I may, I'd like to back up a bit and try to look at the big picture for the benefit of consumers, for example. Okay, these are the elements that we've talked about so far. Number one, with El Nino coming in, mukhang magkakaagawan dun sa world supply ng bigas. Number two, NFA apparently is not supposed to be importing for buffer stocks. And then, number three, local production might be going down by the second half because of El Nino and the dry season. So where are we as far as, coming into the second half of the year, as far as prices and supply of rice are concerned? Anong maasa natin na nakikita natin mangyari?
I think it will all depend on imports between now and June 30. No? Because
Yung preparatory imports, kumbaga, yung paghahanda.
so that by June 30, we have enough stocks for the next 3 months of the lean months. No? September, October, wala na tayong problema dahil yun na yung main harvest season. Pero yung 3 buwan na yan, and that is what happened in 2018 also when we had the rice crisis. The prices shot up during the 3-month lean period because stock levels were very low. No?
But you're talking about private sector imports.
Yes, yes. Now, maybe the government, kung worst comes to worst, they will parang pikit mata na lang sa batas and mag-i-import. No? And kung ako yung tatanungin, who am I to complain? Survival natin yan sa country. No? But that is against the law. No? The law that they pushed in 2019. So I don't know how they will wiggle around it. I think they are planning to import through other agencies because the law says only NFA is not allowed to import. So pwedeng interpret mo yun. Pwede pala yung iba. No? But like Fermin said, Dr. Fermin said, that is not the spirit of RTL because the spirit of RTL is total government withdrawal from the market. Pang buffer stock lang siya for contingency. Let the private sector take care of the rice business. No? Totally. Whether it's imports or local trade. No? Ganun yung concept nila sa rice. In fact, the title of that law is not rice tarification law, rice trade liberalization law.
Yes.
So, if we need to review that, then maybe we should start doing that. No?
Dr. Min, kayo po.
Critical talaga yung sinasabi nga na period na yun. I think if you're knowledgeable about the rice economy, it's critical. Ito yung, hindi lang yung 2008, nung 1994, 1995, remember the late Secretary Sebastian, he made the decision to import too little, too late. And that happened also in 2018. Yun kaya nga yung rason ng RTL, bakit pag gobyerno kasi nagdidesisyon, may tsansa na maging again too little, too late. And that's the reason why we wanted the private sector, based on the profit that they're going to obtain, be the one to engage in the marketing or trading of the rice. Yun po yung dahilan. Tama po yung sinasabi niya doon. Kung titignan naman natin, may mga paraan naman na mag-i-import ang gobyerno. Yung nga sabi, in the past, we actually explored the possibility of importing it doon sa PITC. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng perang PITC na, I don't know, hinahanap nila lumpay, na pwedeng mag-import yun, yung PITC. The other fact is really to, for the government to talk to the big private traders and private importers. Kilala naman natin yan. Mayroong Golden City dyan sa Bulacan na kilala All you have to do is talk to them. And government can do its moral suasion of, trying to convince them to import now. Ang problem nga natin, yung harvest season ng Vietnam, where the supply is plenty, parang nag-overlap dun sa ating harvest season din. Yun yung problema natin. So, pero magagawa ng paraan yan if the government, at particularly the Department of Agriculture, talks to the private traders.
Yes,
Kilala naman nila lahat yan mga tao na yan na involved.
Pero sir, I suppose the operative word here is now. I mean, habang maaga, bago magkaagawan.
Yes.
Pero
Yes.
yun nga po are we anywhere near doing that? do we see any
Pero
indications of that happening?
Pag tinignan mo yung datos dun sa pag tinignan mo yung datos sa arrival, dito sa akin, ang arrival natin, total arrival, as of end of March, 790,000 metric tons na po ang pumasok. That is unprecedented. Kasi normally 1.8 to 2 million lang. Last year, yun lang nagtataka ko. Kasi last year, we over-imported 3.8 million metric tons. Historically, ang mga 2 million metric tons. So sobra-sobra yung importation last year. Ngayon, dito sa datos ng makikita mo, pag inano mo doon sa DA, nasa 790,000 metric tons na ang pumasok nitong end of March. So, there's so much rice supposedly. I don't know now kung may mga speculation na nangyayari or manipulation sa market. But this is based on DA data.
There's so much rice.
But
Babalikan natin yan.
Okay. Sir, yan muna. We will just go into a quick break.
Babalikan
Sir.
natin yan.
We'll just go into a quick break. Ang dami natin gustong balikan after this quick break. So please stay with us.
Welcome back to Chiefs. We are talking about rice supply and prices with Raul Montemayor of the Federation of Free Farmers Cooperatives and former Agriculture Undersecretary Fermin Adriano. Gentlemen, before we took that break, medyo nagulat kami na
Dami pala bigas.
marami pala tayong bigas. Mr. Montemayor, 790,000 metric tons imported just in the first quarter.
Yes.
Is that an accurate figure?
Actually, that 790,000 tons is slightly lower than what we imported last year during the first 3 months.
Pero nag-over-import nga daw kasi tayo last year.
But we're comparing period imports.
Year
no?
on year.
Yes.
And the other thing that we have to consider is, based on the data supplied by PSA, our production in 2022 dropped by 18%, or almost 3.5 million tons. No? Hindi nga kami makapaniwala na ganun kalaki because of fertilizer prices basically. No? So as I said, our supply comes from the carryover stock from last year, which dropped by 18%. And then we have the imports, which dropped a little bit. And then the production, it might be normal. The DA is projecting a slight increase. So overall, compared to last year, medyo mas manipis ang stocks this year. No? Walang shortage, no? But less supply. And if that situation carries over during the lean months, that might be a problem for the government.
So doon ang gagaling yung warning that there might be a rice crisis
Yes.
ahead
Yes.
this year, no?
Yes.
Pero tama rin ba yung assessment ni President Marcos that we have a lot of rice?
Again, it's a matter of when and where, no? Because
And how much?
and how much, no?
Kasi malaki
Kasi
how much,
ngayon,
Kaya tumaas na eh. Tumaas
harvest
in the-
time,
Yes, in
we
the
have a lot of
recipes.
rice, no? Pero lean months, baka kulangin, no? And then because of our geographical situation, kung minsan may pockets of shortage, may pockets of surplus, no? And then by how much nga, no? Kung relative siya, no? But tignan mo yung buong taon, our local production, kulang. We have to import.
So Mr. Adriano, kung titingnan yung buong taon, are you seeing a crisis ahead? Maybe in the third or fourth quarter?
I don't know about the supply. Kasi dito sa datos, unfortunately, no, yung datos na ano natin, yung beginning stock natin, yung carry over na sinasabi nga is from sa January nga is 1.77 million metric tons. That's about good for about 40 or 40 days, 37 days. So, pag tinignan mo talaga, I don't know kung may fault tong yung kasi ginawa to ng Field Rice together with may satellite sila na PRISM na project. Ito po yung datos na binigay ng Philippine Rice Research Institute. So, based on their kasi yung analysis sometimes ng PSA delayed sila, di ba? Kasi after the fact yung kanilang datos. Pero sa kanilang pagtutuos na sinasabi nila dito, sana magkatututo para sa ating tambayan, ang pinaka-problema nga natin talaga yung third quarter ng taon na 20 days lang, yun ang pinakamababa. Pero for the first quarter, we have about 59 days based on their data. Second quarter, 51 days. Babaksak yun ng quarter 3 ng 20 days. At tataasan naman yan because of the harvest during that time ng about 45 days. So annually, makakaroon tayo ng mga 45 days of stocks, which is about another 1.7 million carry over for the next year. Ang problema natin, ang tanong, sa presyo. Yun ang, sa akin, yun ang worry ko. Kasi kahit, from the nutrition perspective, kahit na rin yung, tinatawag na supply, kung it's beyond the
Yes,
purchasing power of the food, may problema talaga tayo. Sana yun ang makontrol ng gobyerno kasi yun ang medyo pinakamalaking problema across the board dito sa agricultural commodities, hindi lang sa rice. Makikita nyo sa onion, meat, and everything, di ba? So sa akin, tama si Presidente na meron tayong ample, relatively stable supply of rice for this year. Again, the problem is how much yung and nobody can predict that because we don't know yung two factors na sinabi ninyo doon sa international price kung tataas yan sa ibang bansa because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict and greater demand for rice. And secondly, because of the El Nino, which according to the US will happen during the summer and fall. But the severity, hindi pa determine how severe it will be. So, ang daming uncertainties na hinaharap natin. Pero tama si Raul, dapat talaga i-build natin talaga yung stock natin. That's the only way. And if we can have more private sector import, that will be better. And it has to be, the government has to take the leadership role there and more active role in terms of talking to our private traders to import more. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yun nga, sir, gentlemen, however you look at it nga, basta may pera ka, which is of course malaking bagay, makakaroon ka ng bebenta.
Yes.
So, sir, yun nga, sir. So I go back to that. By the third quarter, I know you just said it's a bit difficult to make a projection on the possible prices by the third quarter because there are so many elements moving, so many variables moving. But is it possible to come to an estimate as to whether prices would increase on the third quarter and by how much an estimate would be, or would that be too adventurous?
And that's for the economists to do, to project.
Mahihirapan tayo kasi I don't know kung magkano yung ibibigay nilang subsidiya sa fertilizer. Kasi yun ang isang biggest cost item, di ba? Tapos yun sa petrol kung magbibigay sila ng subsidiya. So kung walang subsidiya yun, talagang papalo talaga yung... Kasi yun ang halos nag-double yung fertilizer price natin. O bumaba ng konti, pero yun ang laging kino-complain ng mga magsasaka at saka yung mga petrol price na Of course, yung labor natin tumataas kasi 40% ng production natin halos labor eh. So, ang hirap ikalkulang yun yan. Siguro sa gobyerno
Yes, sir.
kung magbibigay
Sige, sir.
sila ng mas maraming ayuda.
Sige, sir. Pasingin lang, sir. Let me reframe the question again na lang. If you want to forestall, one ahead of any significant increase in the prices of rice by the third quarter, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing already? Or hindi pa rin?
Ewan ko kasi hindi na ako nasa department. Dapat, tama si Rol, dapat kinakausap na nila yung mga private traders eh. Tataka nga ako, dapat sila narito sa forum mo. Hindi ako. Yun lang dapat kinakausap na nila yun. Dapat nag-prepare na sila ng package of assistance to the farmers.
Yes,
Ngayon
sir.
pa lang. Kasi magtatanim di ba? Magtatanim na ngayon. Dapat i-deliver mo lalo na particularly yung subsidy doon sa fertilizer at yung subsidy doon sa sa seeds at ikatlo yung yung role ng NIA yung patubig. Dapat talagang orchestrated ngayon yun. Dapat ginagawa nila po yun.
Yes,
Pero
sir.
hindi ko po alam kasi wala
Kasi
na
sir,
ako
patapos yung Abril, sunod na yung Mayo, tapos Hunyo na. We're running out of time.
Yes, and
Yes, sir.
if ever they introduce these assistance programs to farmers, you will feel the effect only in September, October, because that's when they will harvest. So again, yung 3 buwan na critical, yun ang problema talaga natin kasi yung harvest will come after that. So we have to prepare for the next 3 months, and unfortunately, it will depend on imports.
So kaya nga yun ang pinupush nga ng government,
Yes.
import. So kaya lang, both you and Mr. Adriano are in agreement na bawal yon under the tarification law, no?
Bawal,
but you
for
mentioned na baka pwede na another government agency ang mag-G2G. Is that possible, Mr. Adriano?
Oo, yun nga, yung Philippine PITC.
Yes.
Yun yung ginagamit nilang instrument. Yun
Pero
din ang ginamit nila
nangyari
sa
na ba yun?
pag-import ng...
Has it ever been done?
Yeah. Not
So
for rice,
pwede.
but other commodities. Not for rice, but other commodities. They
But
did
other
that.
commodities are
Using
not covered by specific law on tarification, di ba? So under the
But the
tarification
law-
law, pwede
The
kaya
law
yun?
only specifies... The law only specifies NFA,
Yes.
not necessarily government.
Do you agree with that?
Well, yung option ng PITC was inserted by the economic managers in the IRR. It's not in the law.
IRR.
No? And in the IRR, it says there has to be a declaration of shortage first before PITC can come in. So medyo may mga hadlang na naman doon.
Pero sir,
Eh
madali
kung
lang yung declaration.
shortage ng buffer.
But they said there's ample supply.
Eh kung shortage ng buffer,
No, it's a
hindi pwede.
shortage.
Tunay na shortage.
If you say there's ample supply, how can you declare a shortage? Yan ang problema ngayon dyan. No? So, but beyond PITC, I suppose they can use the SWD or other agencies. No? Ang problema lang dyan, once you allow that kind of parang palihis na
Yes,
solution,
going around.
what's to stop them from doing something similar in the future? and destroy the whole concept of trade liberalization, of government interfering in the market. No? Batas yan eh. People have to follow the law, not find ways to skirt around the law, di ba?
Kung DSWD
The
will,
context is the Philippines.
DSWD will import for Kadiwa, halimbawa.
Yes.
Pwede ba yun? Pwede ba yun? You think that's feasible? Mr. Adriano?
I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, so hindi ko po alam ba. I have to ask my son who's a lawyer.
But,
Yeah, but I think that's why we are saying let's review that law kasi it has unduly tied the hands of government to respond to situations like this, no? Kasi sabi nila the market will take care of itself, no? What if it doesn't? Who will come in? The government, but you tie the hands of government, cannot import, cannot release stocks except during calamities. I think they should provide some leeway for government to address situations like this, no?
but speaking of Kadiwa, no? Yeah, recently also, sabi ni President Marcos, we are nearing the 20 rise sa Kadiwa. Kasi 25 na daw
25
ngayon.
na.
What do you think naman of that assessment?
You know, when they sell NFA rice in the Kadiwa at 25, NFA loses at least 10 pesos per kilo. No? Ang laking pera yan. Yung 9 billion budget nila sa isa o dalawang cycle na pagbibenta ng bigas sa Kadiwa, ubos yun in subsidies to consumers. No? So, I
And
don't think...
it's not even an organized subsidy in the sense na targeted siya. Pero kung sinong bibili sa Kadiwa, sila nakaka-avail.
So, aside from the fact that it's not supposed to be done because the RTL said only for calamities, it's artificially cheap price because in fact, the government is losing a lot of money by selling at 25. No? So, how far can they do that? No? Para sa akin kasi yung aspiration na 20 or 25, that is not the urgent concern now. No? Let's focus first on helping our farmers to encouraging them to plant so that they can supply enough rice for us. No? And let's look later on at reducing the cost of production, no? So that they can do that. Sa ngayon, if you sell at 25, you have to buy the farmer's palay at around 12, 13. No? Lugi na sila. Wala na magtatanim pagka ganyan. No?
Yung farm gate nasa 23, di ba?
Yes, 20. Yes. Yun, medyo masaya sila ngayon. No? But you bring that down to 12 or 13.
Pag farm gate mo is 20, what's the reasonable retail price?
It should be around 40. Normally
40,
times 2 siya. No? Kaya lang when you look at retail, ang dami-daming klaseng presyo, di ba?
Yeah.
May 38, 40, 45. Because there are many classes of rice, grades of rice. No? But the normal rice that the poor consumers buy is the cheapest, which is the 25% brokens, used to be at 36. I understand that it's almost 40. No? And ito rin yung binibenta ng NFA na 25 pesos sa Kadiwa. So ang laki ng disparity between the Kadiwa price and the retail price in the market. No?
And that price is supposed to be the buffer.
Supposed to be buffer. Yes. Nalulugi ng gobyerno na uubos pa yung buffer. No? And I even read they instructed NFA to give rice allowances to all government employees using again the buffer. No? So,
Ganun.
maganda naman yon, masaya yung taga-gobyerno, but what if tamaan tayo ng malaking bagyo? No? Anong itutugon ng
So
gobyerno?
in terms of policy, may problema.
Well, the law, I think. No? It does not equip the agency to secure buffer stocks from alternative sources if this mode of acquisition does not work. No? Kailangan may leeway yung gobyerno dyan. No? Otherwise, they will take steps that might eventually harm the farmers, no? By importing millions of tons na magpapabagsak na naman ang presyo ng palay. No?
Pero gentlemen, I'll go back now to the original question, which is, does government recognize the correct problem that it has to address? Di ba? If the solution that it's been looking at is for NFA to import buffer stocks instead of getting the private sector to undertake the importation on its own in preparation for the lean months, Baka may problema rin sa interpretation kung ano yung problema at kung anong solusyon? Sir, Dr. Diano.
Sir. Yung buffer stock hindi po for 3 months yan. For emergency or
Opo.
purposes yan, disaster. Pag tinamaan ng bagyo o ganyan, calamity, yung po yan ang purpose yan. Hindi po yan purpose niyan na itinda sa
Yes, sir.
kadiwa.
Yes, sir.
At hindi po yan purpose niyan na ibigay na rice bonus sa mga manggagawa ng gobyerno. So, in other words, it has a purpose and you're violating, you're not conforming with the purpose of it. You're stretching your imagination and therefore, if you're saying that's a bad idea, I think it's not the concept per se, which is a bad idea. It's the way you're applying it because that's not the purpose of that buffer stock. Yan po yung sa aking masasabi. Kung nag-confine tayo doon sa buffer stocking, I think that's a very, very noble objective. Nabibilin mo yung buffer stock mo sa mga
local.
magsasaka natin. Tama lang talaga po. Kahit nataasan natin yung support price.
Yes, sir.
Dagdagan natin yung para maging incentive sa magsasaka. Okay pa yun eh. Pero if you're going beyond that objective and then you blame the idea for that, for failure to meet your objectives or something like that, medyo parang taliwas. Hindi tama, sa tingin ko.
Mr. Adriano, pahabol ko na lang. We're speaking of aspirations. Siyempre, hanggang ngayon, lahat tayo nagtatanong, will we ever be a rice sufficient country? Kung hindi man rice exporting country. Because I understand at some point, nung panahon ng first Marcos administration, kahit sandaling-sandali, we were actually able to export rice. No? So, kahit kalimutan na natin yan, can we ever be really self-sufficient na yung kung mag-i-import man tayo para kung gusto lang natin ng medyo ibang klaseng variety and not because we have a shortage or to fill a supply gap in the country. May pag-asa ba yun?
Pwede tayong sufficient pero not 100% self-sufficient. Kasi ang malaking problema, tinitignan ko nga yung datos, yung population natin, 112 million na dito sa datos. 112 million na, ang bilis Tapos yung consumption, dati 118 kilograms ang consumption ng rice. Ngayon, ang ginagamit nilang benchmark 120, nadagdagan ng 2 kilo. So how can you, with given limited resources, land, with the natural resources and people engage in farming, how can you be able to make yourself 100% sufficient when we're defying the laws of nature? Kasi ang bilis ng pagdami ng tao, ang bilis ng paglago ng demand, pero yung perang nilalagay natin, yung lupa na natin o tubig na naroon, napakabagal naman ng paglawak, pagdevelop. So, palagay ko nung ko pa sinabi, yung 20 to 25 pesos, aspirational yan, nung pala October last year. Sinabi ko, pwede tayong maging sufficient at about 90%, kaya yan, and then i-import natin yung 10%. At hindi naman masamang idea kasi ginawa na yan sa Indonesia, ganun ang policy ng Indonesia. We reached 90% where we can produce rice at very profitable, and after that, if it becomes too costly, we will just import. Earlier, ang Malaysia declared, si Mahathir during that time, na sinabi niya, since we do not have the land, the resources for it, we'll just be producing about 60 to 65% of our requirement. And then we will import the rest from the rest of the world. And what he said, that the extra money for rice, we would use it to develop other commodities which are high-value crops that will give greater incomes to our farmers. Yun nga yung rubber tsaka yung palm oil nila na napakalakas nila. So, that's a policy decision and that's a strategy. Pero sasabihin natin na 100%, sa tingin ko, mahihirapan talaga because we are going against nature.
Mr. Montemayor, that's what the farmers do.
Self-sufficiency, kayang-kaya. Because our deficit is only about 10 to 15%. It's about maybe 2 million, 3 million tons. No? You just need to increase the present yield from about 4 to a little over 5, a little below 5. No? Doable yan with irrigation, with support to farmers. Pero ang problema natin, at what cost? And if our cost of production is high, even assuming we are self-sufficient, then you allow the cheap imports to come in, you will end up with a supply glut. No? and the local prices will go down, and it will remove the incentives for farmers to continue planting. So, hindi sustainable yung sufficiency target without addressing the issue of competitiveness of our farmers. No? And in fact, being competitive will be the best assurance that we will become self-sufficient eventually. No? But if we are not competitive, we will continue to be reliant on imports. So palagay ko yung self-sufficiency, yung 20 peso rice, medyo itabi muna natin yon. Tulungan natin yung mga magsasaka na maging productive, no? Efficient, competitive. No? And once they reach a certain level, then we can start addressing the issue of sufficiency and low prices of rice. No?
Tsaka bawas sa only rice.
Bawas.
Kasi
Marami nang tumigil ng
dumaraming consumption natin ng kanin pala.
Nasasayang daw, natatapon.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to say thank you very much, Dr. Fermin Adriano, former Agriculture Undersecretary. Always a pleasure to have you on board, sir. And also,
you.
maraming salamat kay Mr. Raul Montemayor
Salamat
from
din
the
po.
Federation of Free Farmers Cooperative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much po. Thank you.
And that's it for the Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao.
We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.